Representatives from a dozen species gathered, their forms as varied as the stars themselves, scaled diplomats with shimmering carapaces, towering beings of pulsing light, and serpentine creatures coiled with predatory elegance. Yet all eyes, multiple and singular, turned toward the lone human who entered the room. Damian Walsh strode forward, his measured steps echoing against the chamber's polished obsidian floor. Clad in the understated elegance of a diplomat's attire, he exuded a calm that bordered on predatory stillness. There was nothing overtly intimidating about him. No grand display of weaponry, no towering stature, but his gaze, sharp and unyielding, carried the weight of someone accustomed to command. The Galactic Empire had expected Earth to send another naive envoy, desperate to curry favor. Instead, they got Damian Walsh. He approached the circular podium at the center of the chamber, its edges glowing faintly with the cyan hue of an anti-gravity field. Around him, the Empire's delegates whispered among themselves in languages older than humanity's first tools, their disdain poorly masked. To them, humanity was a fledgling species, barely a blip on the galactic timeline. Damian, however, carried himself as though he belonged, as though he were already their equal, or perhaps their better. Honored representatives of the Galactic Empire, Damian began, his voice steady, resonant. I stand before you today not as a supplicant, but as a partner seeking mutual respect and understanding. A low hiss emanated from a representative of the Solarian Dominion, a reptilian species known for its territorial aggression. Mutual respect, the Solarian delegate sneered, his scaled lips curling into a mockery of a smile. Humans have barely clawed their way out of their gravity well. And now you speak of partnership with the Empire? Arrogance knows no bounds. Damian's expression didn't waver, though his eyes seemed to gleam with a cold light. Arrogance, he replied smoothly, is underestimating a species that has thrived on a planet as hostile as Earth. We are no strangers to adversity, nor to those who would seek to dominate us. The chamber fell silent, the weight of his words pressing against the assembled delegates. Even those who had dismissed humanity as insignificant felt a flicker of unease. Damian was not what they had expected. His words were calculated, his demeanor unshakable. He spoke not as a subordinate, but as someone who had already mapped out every possible move in this intricate game of diplomacy. The Emperor's voice cut through the silence, smooth and commanding. Seated upon his elevated throne, his golden armor gleaming under the artificial starlight, he leaned forward. And what, Ambassador Walsh, does humanity offer in return for this partnership? Surely, you understand that alliances are built on contributions, not mere words. Damian inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the Emperor without ceding an inch of authority. We offer innovation born of necessity, resilience forged in the crucible of survival, and the willingness to challenge stagnation. Humanity has always thrived on adaptation. We bring that spirit to the table. The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed, and the air grew heavier, as though the room itself objected to Damian's defiance. The Solarian delegate hissed again, louder this time. Your words are nothing but smoke. The Empire has no need for your kind, mere scavengers of a backwater world. Damian turned his gaze toward the Solarian, his calm demeanor unbroken. And yet, he said quietly, it was humanity who devised the algorithm that stabilized your Dominion's interstellar trade routes last year, was it not? Efficiency improved by 15%, if I recall correctly. The Solarian's his faltered, and murmurs rippled through the chamber. Damian's expression remained neutral, but his words carried a sharpness that cut deeper than any blade. He wasn't here to beg or bargain. He was here to make it clear that humanity had already begun to weave itself into the fabric of the galaxy. As the debate continued, Damian dismantled each objection with precision. A delegate from the crystalline Volthrain collective attempted to question humanity's technological contributions, only to be reminded of Earth's recent breakthroughs in energy optimization. A hulking representative from the Kithrax coalition challenged humanity's military readiness, but Damian countered with a measured explanation of Earth's strategic ingenuity in asymmetric warfare. For every accusation, every slight, Damien had a response, calm, articulate, and unrelenting. The Galactic Empire had underestimated humanity, and in doing so, they had underestimated him. The chamber, once filled with dismissive whispers, now bristled with tension. But as Damien concluded his argument, a subtle shift occurred. The Emperor's expression darkened, his golden eyes gleaming with something more dangerous than mere skepticism. The human had made his case, but in doing so, he had embarrassed the Empire's most vocal representatives. To a ruler accustomed to absolute control, this was unacceptable. As the session adjourned, Damien offered a respectful bow, his composure unshaken. The delegates dispersed, their expressions a mixture of irritation and grudging respect. But behind closed doors, the Emperor summoned his inner circle. "He is dangerous," the Emperor said, his voice cold. "Not just because of his words, but because of what they represent. Humanity is no longer content to remain in the shadows. They seek to rise, and this Damien Walsh may be the spark that ignites their ambition." One of his advisors, a sleek, feline-like creature with piercing violet eyes, leaned forward. "Shall we monitor him more closely, Your Grace?" The Emperor's gaze hardened. "No, we cannot allow him to return to Earth with what he has gained here. His influence must be extinguished, permanently." As assassins were summoned and plans set in motion, Damien walked alone through the alien city, the faint glow of its artificial skyline casting long shadows. He was aware of the eyes watching him, the hostility that lingered just beyond his periphery. Yet he walked with the quiet confidence of a predator, one who understood that the hunt had already begun. What the Galactic Empire didn't know, what they couldn't have predicted, was that Damien Walsh was no ordinary human. Beneath the veneer of diplomacy lay something far older, far darker, and infinitely more ruthless. For centuries, he had played the role of a man, but he was far more. And now, the game had truly begun. The faint hum of alien machinery filled the air as Damien Walsh walked through the labyrinthine streets of the imperial capital. The city was a vast sprawl of glimmering spires and neon-lit alleyways, a testament to the Galactic Empire's technological dominance. Yet, for all its grandeur, it carried an undercurrent of menace. Damien's sharp eyes darted subtly from side to side, taking in the flickers of movement in the shadows, the figures too carefully positioned to be mere passers-by. The Empire's arrogance was evident. They thought their trap was flawless. Damien had felt the shift in the air the moment he left the council chamber. The murmurs of the delegates, the cold stare of the Emperor, the lingering hostility of the Solarian representative, all of it culminated in the same inevitable conclusion. They had made their decision. He was marked. A lesser man might have faltered, quickened his pace, or sought sanctuary in the heavily monitored diplomatic quarters. But Damien was no lesser man. His steps remained steady, his expression impassive, his demeanor giving no indication that he was anything more than a simple envoy concluding his day's work. Inside, however, his mind was razor-sharp, calculating every possibility, every move. He turned a corner into a narrower street, its lighting dim, the glow of hovering drones casting erratic shadows along the walls. Here, the watchers closed in. Their presence was no longer subtle. They emerged from doorways and alleyways, cloaked figures moving with the fluid grace of trained killers. Each step they took was soundless, their weapons gleaming faintly in the low light. Compact, alien devices designed for precision and silence. Damien stopped, his posture calm, almost relaxed. He let his gaze sweep over the assassins as they encircled him, their forms reflecting the diverse species of the Empire. One was a towering insectoid creature with serrated limbs, its multifaceted eyes glinting with predatory hunger. Another was humanoid, clad in sleek, obsidian armor that seemed to absorb the light around it. The others were no less formidable, each carrying the unmistakable aura of death. "You've been watching me for some time," Damien said, his voice carrying easily in the tense silence. "I take it subtlety is no longer part of your orders." The humanoid assassin stepped forward, its voice modulated through a vocoder, giving it a hollow, metallic tone. "You should not have come here, human. The Empire has no use for those who overstep their station." Damien tilted his head slightly, as if considering the words. "Interesting. And here I thought the Empire prided itself on diplomacy and civility. Seems I've misjudged." The insectoid assassin hissed, its limbs twitching with impatience. "Enough talking. End him." They moved as one, a blur of precision and lethality, their training evident in the fluidity of their attack. But as they closed the distance, Damien's demeanor shifted. His calm gave way to something far more primal, a sharpness that flickered in his eyes, a predator's focus honed over centuries. The first assassin struck, its blade aimed for his heart. But before the blade could land, Damien sidestepped within human speed, his hand snapping forward to catch the weapon mid-thrust. The assassin's eyes widened in shock as Damien twisted the blade free and drove it into its chest with effortless strength. Chaos erupted. The insectoid assassin lunged, its serrated limbs slicing through the air with deadly precision. But Damien was faster. He ducked under its attack, his movements impossibly smooth, and drove an elbow into the creature's thorax, shattering the chitinous armor. As it staggered back, he followed up with a devastating blow to its head, leaving it crumpled on the ground. The remaining assassins hesitated, their confidence shaken. They had prepared for a human, fragile, predictable, bound by the limitations of flesh and bone. What they faced now was something entirely different. Damien's eyes glowed faintly red in the dim light, a telltale sign of his true nature breaking through the surface. His movements were not those of a man, but of a predator unleashed, his strikes precise and unrelenting. He moved through the assassins like a shadow, his speed and strength rendering their advanced weaponry useless. One by one, they fell. The humanoid in obsidian armor managed to fire a shot from its energy weapon, but Damien dodged the beam with ease, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. He wrenched the weapon from its hands and crushed it effortlessly before delivering a blow that sent the assassin sprawling. The last of the group, a wiry, feline-like creature with razor-sharp claws, attempted to flee, its courage shattered. Damien caught it before it could escape, pinning it against the wall with a single hand. His grip was unyielding, his glowing eyes boring into the assassins. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice low, but carrying a weight that made the assassin shudder. The feline hissed weakly, its claws scrabbling against the wall. "The Emperor," it rasped. "He ordered your death. You're a threat to the Empire's balance." Damien's expression darkened, his grip tightening for a moment before he released the assassin, letting it collapse to the ground. He stepped back, his breathing steady, his composure already returning. Around him, the alley was silent, the bodies of the fallen assassins lying motionless, their precision and training no match for the ancient predator they had underestimated. He adjusted his jacket, brushing away the faintest trace of dust, and cast one last glance at the feline assassin. "Tell your emperor," he said coldly, "that humanity does not bow. And neither do I." With that, he turned and walked away, his steps as measured and unhurried as they had been before the attack. Behind him, the remnants of the ambush lay as a stark testament to the Empire's folly. As Damien disappeared into the city's labyrinth of light and shadow, his mind was already moving ahead. The Emperor's intentions were clear now, his arrogance laid bare. The rules of engagement had shifted, and Damien had no intention of remaining on the defensive. Far above, the Emperor would soon learn the price of underestimating humanity's representative, a man who was far more than he seemed. And for the first time in centuries, Damien felt the stirrings of something he had long buried, the thrill of a hunt. The imperial palace loomed over the city like a monolith, its spires piercing the darkened sky. Beneath the shimmering lattice of energy shields and security drones, it was a fortress as much as it was a symbol of the Emperor's absolute power. Inside, its halls gleamed with opulence, walls lined with rare minerals that seemed to glow from within, floors of polished obsidian, so pristine they mirrored the vast chandeliers above. And at its heart, behind layers of unbreachable defenses, sat the Emperor himself. Yet, tonight, the unbreachable had been breached. Damian Walsh moved through the labyrinthine corridors with a predator's grace, silent as a whisper, unseen by the myriad sensors and guards stationed throughout. The assassin's failure had not gone unnoticed. Security across the palace had been tightened, patrols doubled, and automated turrets primed. But none of that mattered. Damian wasn't relying on technology or stealth gear. He was relying on instincts honed over centuries, on senses that reach beyond the tangible, and on a patience born of immortality. He paused in the shadow of a towering pillar, his head tilting slightly as he listened. Footsteps, 3 guards heavily armed, approaching from the adjoining hall. Their movements were precise, disciplined. The Empire's finest, undoubtedly. Damian allowed himself a faint smile. For all their training, they were still prey. As the guards turned the corner, he moved. In an instant, he was among them, a blur of motion that their eyes couldn't track. The first fell silently, a swift strike to the throat, cutting off any cry for help. The second managed to raise his weapon before Damian disarmed him with a single fluid motion, the rifle clattering harmlessly to the ground. The third tried to retreat, but Damian's hand shot out, gripping the back of his armor and pulling him close. "Where is the Emperor?" Damian asked, his voice low, calm, and utterly devoid of mercy. The guard stammered, his composure shattered by the unnatural glow of Damian's eyes. The throne room," he managed, his voice trembling. Damian released him with a shove, and the guard crumpled to the ground, unconscious before he hit the polished floor. Without a backward glance, Damian continued on, his steps purposeful, his expression unchanging. The throne room doors were massive, forged from an alloy that gleamed like liquid silver. Intricate carvings adorned their surface, depicting the Empire's conquest over millennia. To Damian, they were nothing more than a monument to arrogance. He placed a hand against the cool metal, his fingers brushing the surface lightly, before pushing. The doors groaned open with a resonant sound that filled the vast chamber beyond. The throne room was as grand as it was oppressive, a cavernous space designed to humble all who entered. The Emperor sat upon his throne, a towering construct of gold and black steel that seemed to radiate authority. His golden armor shimmered faintly, his piercing eyes locked onto Damian the moment he stepped inside. "You are bold," the Emperor said, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 battles won, 1,000 worlds subjugated. Few would dare to enter this place unbidden. Fewer still would survive the attempt. Damian stopped a dozen paces from the throne, his posture relaxed, his hands at his sides. He regarded the Emperor with a calm that bordered on insolence. "Your assassins were insufficient," he replied, his tone as smooth as polished glass. "Perhaps next time you will consider a more personal approach." The Emperor's lips curled into a faint smile, though his eyes remained cold. "You mistake my tolerance for weakness, human. You've overstepped your bounds, and now you stand in the heart of my empire, alone and at my mercy." Damian's smile mirrored the Emperor's, though his carried none of the warmth. "At your mercy? Is that what you believe?" The Emperor rose from his throne, his towering figure imposing even without the elevated platform. "I am the ruler of the most powerful empire in the galaxy," he said, his voice rising with each word. "My will is law. My reach is absolute. And you, Damian Walsh, are nothing more than a fleeting annoyance." In an instant, Damian moved. One moment he stood still, the next he was a blur, closing the distance between them with impossible speed. The Emperor barely had time to react before Damian's hand shot out, gripping his wrist and stopping the blade he had drawn inches from his own throat. The Emperor's eyes widened, his strength unmatched among mortals, yet his arm trembled under Damian's grip. "You're not human," the Emperor said, his voice tinged with disbelief and, for the first time, fear. Damien's grip tightened and he leaned in close, his voice a low whisper that seemed to echo in the vast chamber. Not entirely, but that's a detail you should have considered before declaring me an enemy. With a twist, Damien wrenched the blade from the Emperor's grasp and flung it aside, the weapon skidding across the floor with a metallic clang. The Emperor stumbled back, his composure faltering as Damien straightened, his glowing eyes locked onto his opponent. "You sent assassins to kill me," Damien said, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of fury. "You underestimated humanity. You underestimated me. That was your first mistake." The Emperor recovered quickly, his golden armor gleaming as he straightened to his full height. "You think you're invincible," he spat, his tone regaining its edge. "You think your tricks make you more than what you are? I've crushed civilizations, exterminated entire species. You are nothing compared to the might of the Empire." Damien tilted his head slightly, a predatory glint in his eyes. "And yet, here I stand." The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with the weight of the standoff. The Emperor's confidence was a fortress, but cracks had begun to form, and Damien was relentless. "Let me be clear," Damien continued, his voice steady, his words deliberate. "Humanity will not bow to the likes of you. We are not your subjects. We are not your prey. And if you ever attempt to harm my people again, I will ensure that your empire crumbles from within." The Emperor's fists clenched at his sides, his pride warring with the reality of the situation. Damien saw the struggle in his eyes, the realization that this was not a foe who could be cowed or crushed with brute force. After a long moment, the Emperor spoke, his voice low and venomous. "Leave, but know this. The Empire does not forget, and it does not forgive." Damien turned without another word, his steps echoing through the silent chamber as he walked toward the doors. He paused at the threshold, glancing back over his shoulder. "Neither do I." With that, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving the Emperor alone in his throne room, his golden armor gleaming but his power tarnished. For the first time in his reign, the Emperor felt the sting of vulnerability, a crack in the facade of his invincibility. The cold vacuum of space stretched endlessly, dotted with the faint, unblinking lights of distant stars. At the edge of the Galactic Empire's controlled territories, a single human fleet drifted, its sleek, angular ships gleaming against the darkness. Humanity had come far, farther than anyone in the Empire had ever expected, or dared to acknowledge. On the bridge of the flagship Resolute, Damien Walsh stood before the wide viewport, his hands clasped behind his back. The human fleet was an embodiment of innovation and resilience, its vessels bristling with weaponry and shield technology that had evolved in response to countless challenges. But it wasn't just a fleet that made humanity formidable. It was their spirit, their refusal to be subjugated. Behind him, Admiral Marcus Vance approached, his polished boots echoing softly against the deck. A man of discipline and strategy, Vance had been instrumental in shaping Earth's military defenses. His graying hair and weathered features spoke of experience, but his sharp eyes carried the fire of a man who had never lost his edge. "Reports from the forward scouts, sir," Vance said, his voice steady. "The Empire has mobilized 3 fleets to monitor our movements. They're consolidating forces near the Helios Nebula." Damien nodded slightly, his gaze never leaving the stars. "They're posturing, trying to reassert control after their failure." Vance hesitated for a moment, his tone lowering. "What happened on the capital world? The diplomatic channels have gone silent since your departure. All we've heard are whispers of unrest." Damien turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "The Emperor has been made aware of humanity's resolve. He knows we won't be intimidated, but he also knows we won't strike recklessly." Vance studied him carefully. "And yet, sir, the fleet is here. We've never moved this far into their territory before. It's a bold statement." "Boldness is necessary," Damien replied, his tone carrying a quiet intensity. "The Empire thought of us as lesser beings, as expendable. That perception ends now. We are not here to provoke war, Admiral. We are here to show them what humanity is capable of, to show them we will not be ignored. As if to punctuate his words, a communications officer called out from across the bridge. "Incoming transmission from the Empire, sir." It's the Emperor's flagship. The tension on the bridge thickened. Officers exchanged glances, their hands hovering near control panels. Vance straightened, his expression hardening. "Your orders." Damien's lips curved into a faint smile. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, projecting the towering figure of the Emperor. He was seated on a throne that seemed to radiate authority, his golden armor catching the light of his ship's bridge. His expression was cold, imperious, but there was something else beneath the surface, an unease he couldn't quite hide. "Damien Walsh," the Emperor began, his voice sharp and commanding. "You've come far from your insignificant corner of the galaxy. But do not mistake this incursion as a sign of strength. You are playing a dangerous game." Damien stepped forward, his posture relaxed yet unyielding. "Dangerous games are often the only ones worth playing, Your Majesty. But let us not mince words. You know why we're here." The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. "You think one fleet can challenge the might of the Empire? You think your species, barely out of its infancy, can stand against millennia of dominance?" Damien's expression hardened, his voice calm but cutting. "It's not about challenging you. It's about showing you and the galaxy that humanity will not be subjugated. You attempted to erase me, to silence the voice of an entire species. And yet, here I stand, with the weight of Earth behind me." The Emperor's jaw tightened, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the armrest of his throne. For a moment, the holographic projection crackled with the raw tension between the two men. "You're making a mistake," the Emperor said finally, his voice quieter but no less dangerous. "The Empire does not tolerate defiance." Damien's eyes gleamed faintly, the predatory edge of his true nature surfacing. "And humanity does not tolerate chains." The transmission ended abruptly, the Emperor's image vanishing into the air. For a moment, the bridge was silent, the weight of the exchange settling over the crew. Then Damien turned, his gaze sweeping over the officers and crew who watched him with unwavering trust. "Admiral," he said, his voice steady, "have the fleet hold position. Ensure our shields are at full strength and that our communications are open. Let them come to us." Vance nodded, his voice firm. "Yes, sir." As orders were relayed across the fleet, Damien returned to the viewport, his thoughts racing. The confrontation with the Emperor had not been about posturing or pride. It had been about drawing a line in the sand, one that humanity would defend at any cost. The Empire's response would determine the next chapter of their story. Hours passed in tense anticipation, the fleet holding its formation like a coiled spring. Scouts reported increased activity from the Empire's ships, their movements cautious but deliberate. Yet no direct confrontation came. Then, as the first rays of a distant star began to illuminate the fleet, a transmission came through, a signal broadcast, not just of the human fleet, but across the Empire's communications network. The Emperor's voice echoed across the bridge, his tone measured but laden with the weight of his decision. "To the representatives of Earth and to all who bear witness, let it be known that the Galactic Empire recognizes humanity's sovereignty. You have earned your place among the stars, not through strength, but through resolve. May this be a lesson to all who dare to rise." The bridge erupted into murmurs, officers exchanging stunned glances. Vance turned to Damien, his expression a mixture of surprise and pride. "You did it, sir. They've acknowledged us." Damien's expression remained steady, though his eyes glinted with satisfaction. "This is only the beginning. Humanity has ascended, Admiral, but the stars are vast, and the challenges are far from over." As the fleet began its return journey to Earth, the crew carried with them the knowledge that they had made history. Humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, had carved its place among the galaxy's great powers. And at the heart of it all stood Damien Walsh, a man, a predator, a symbol of Earth's unyielding spirit. Above the endless void, the human fleet sailed, their path illuminated not just by the stars, but by the boundless determination that had brought them this far. The Galactic Empire had learned to respect them, but Damien knew respect was only the first step. The future awaited, vast and unknown, and humanity was ready to claim it.